Well, good afternoon, students. A very warm welcome to Sri Ramanuja Vidya Mandir. We are getting along with our grammar class. We continue the degrees of comparisons. So, we were getting along with the rules of degrees of comparison, students, and I was explaining you the first 4 rules. I have completed explaining you 4 rules, and here we will continue with the 5th rule. So, let us see what this 5th rule is. Now, rule 5, there are a few adjectives that are accompanied by to. Now, generally, I said for superlatives, we have to use the, the, before the adjective. And for comparative, that is adding er or more, after the adjective, we have to use tha and than. That's the rule. So here, I have in the 5th rule, that for for certain things we are not going to use tha and than, but we will use to. So students, there are some words which will not take tha and, that is like senior, junior, superior, inferior, preferable, prefer, elder. Whenever you come with these words, you are not supposed to say, he's senior than me, he's junior than me. They are grammatical mistakes. But instead you have to say, he is senior to me, junior to me. So we'll have a look into the example, students. If I say, I am elder than her, it's a blunder mistake. You are not supposed to say, I'm elder than, but you are supposed to say, I'm elder to. So this is wrong and this is correct. Can you see? I am elder than her is wrong. Though, er, can you see er? It's a comparative. Though you have a comparative adjective here of elder, you are not supposed to use than, but you are supposed to say to. So some exceptional cases and some words will only take to after the comparative adjective. Like, I am elder to her. This car brand is superior than that is wrong. Instead you have to say, this car brand is superior to that. So now you must have understood the rule 5, students. There are few adjectives that are accompanied by to, like senior, junior, superior, inferior, preferable, prefer, elder. Do not use than with these adjectives. With these adjectives you are not supposed to use than. Okay. The next rule is rule 6. When comparing two things, similarity should be there. Remember, students, when I'm comparing two things, the two things must be similar. I can't compare something which is not similar to that adjective. Say, for example, we have a wall example here. This wall color is more beautiful than the old one. Listen carefully. Than the old one. What does this represent, old one? It represents the wall. Okay, it represents the wall. It doesn't represent the wall color, but it represents the wall. Look again into the sentence, students. This wall color is more beautiful than the old one. We are actually talking about the wall. The wall color is compared with the wall. The new wall color is compared to the old wall. This wall color, I've mentioned over here wall color. This wall color is more beautiful than the old one. Then the old one will denote the wall. It will show the wall. It will not show the wall color. So the correct way of writing the sentences is, this wall color is more beautiful than that of the old one. Is more beautiful than that of the. This wall color is more beautiful than that of the old one. So here old one means wall color. So minute mistakes. I'm again explaining you students. They give you these kind of sentences not to change a positive or a comparative or a superlative into the other degree of comparison. But mostly these rules what I'm explaining you, they will give you in correction of sentences. They'll give you a wrong sentence and they'll ask you how you should be writing the correct sentence. So here I have put in red color incorrect and green color correct, so that when you're going through these kind of exercises, you will understand how the grammatical errors occur. Because when we see this, it absolutely appears to be correct. The wall color is more beautiful than the old one. Then you'll be wondering, where is the mistake? This wall color is more beautiful than that of the old one. When I say than that of the is what? Color. The old color. So please be very, very careful when you're changing your degrees of comparisons. So now you must have understood the rule 6. When comparing two things, similarity should be there. Similarity of what? Wall colors. We are actually talking about the wall colors here. We are actually talking about the wall colors. So you can't compare a wall color to another wall. Did you understand? You can't compare a wall color to another wall. So there should be a similarity between the two things. Okay. Next, rule number 7. When the comparative degree is used in the superlative degree sense. Supposing a comparative is used in superlative. What is a comparative, students? Two things compared. What is superlative? More than two things compared. Please bear this in your brain. Very important point. The rule 7 is because this is useful even in your changing of degrees of comparisons. Even when you're changing your degrees of comparisons, you will use this. Now, when a comparative degree is changed into superlative degree, means you use comparative only when you're comparing two things. But that will be a comparative, that means ER. Adding ER or more, which is a comparative, you will use it in a superlative sense. We'll see the example, students. Reena is smarter than any other student in her class. Reena is smarter than, say for example I say, Reena is smarter than Seema. Now I am comparing two people over here, that is Reena and Seema. So this is correct. I am comparing two people, so I say Reena is smarter than Seema. But here actually I am not using this. Instead I am comparing Reena to the entire class. That means Reena is superlative. She is the smartest in the class. But instead of writing she is the smartest in the class, I used a comparative degree as a superlative, in a superlative sense. Did you understand, students? I am using a comparative degree in a superlative sense. Okay? So when I am using a comparative degree in a superlative sense, that's called, then we have to use any other student in the class. Reena is smarter than any other student. We are supposed to write any other. That means no other student is as smart as Reena. That's how you write a positive. So remember very, very carefully, we are using ER a comparative word in a superlative sense. That means she is the smartest in the class. But instead of using smartest, I've said she's smarter than any other. So what is the incorrect sentence? This is also going to come as a correction of sentences. Reena is smarter than any student in her class. Any student we are not supposed to use. We have to use any other student in the class. I repeat again, any other student means no student is as smart as Reena. That's the meaning. So no other student is as smart as. So this is incorrect. You're not supposed to say any student, you're supposed to say any other student. So look into your rule 7. When the comparative degree is used in the superlative degree sense, use any other when things or persons of the same group is compared. Now this is very, very important, students. Same group. Same group. I can't say Reena is more lovely than any puppy or any other puppy or any other puppies. I'm not supposed to compare one group with another group. That is an animal group and this is a human group. Do you understand? So this is very important. Same group. When there is a same group, and in the same group when you're using a comparative as a superlative, then you have to use any other. I repeat. When a comparative is used as a superlative in the same group, then any other must be there. So we have the correct word. Reena is smarter than any other student in her class. Now the next one is any only should be used when it is a different group. Look into this. Use any if comparison of things or person is outside the group. Can you see this? It's not in the same group. Say for example, Delhi is cleaner than any other city in Bangladesh. Delhi is in India. So I'm not supposed to say Delhi is cleaner than any other city. I'm supposed to say Delhi is cleaner than any other city in India. That's correct. Because Delhi is in India. But I'm talking about another country, that's Bangladesh. So that is going to be an incorrect sentence. What is the correct sentence? Delhi is cleaner than any city in Bangladesh. So remember students, when there is a same group, you have to say any other. When it is outside the group, you have to say any. I suppose you understood this point. Rule number 7. You are supposed to say any other when it is in the same group. You are supposed to say any when it is outside the group. So the sentence is Delhi is cleaner than any city in Bangladesh. So this is correct. Now coming up to your rule number 8, students. When in the same sentence two adjectives in different degrees of comparisons are used, both should be complete in themselves. I repeat, when in the same sentence two adjectives of different degrees, two adjectives, not one adjective, two adjectives of different degrees. That means one is comparative, another one is positive, or one is comparative, another one is superlative. Supposing two things are there, then both should be complete by themselves. That means a positive must be written in such a way that it is in a positive sense, and the other comparative must be, you'll understand better if I'll show you the sentence. She is tall, if not shorter than her sister. Understand this sentence, students. I'll just break it into two sentences. Maybe you will be able to understand better. Okay. Now look into this sentence. Let me explain you this sentence. She is tall or taller. She is taller than her sister. Did you understand this point? She is taller than her sister comma, if not, she is tall, if not shorter. If not shorter. I suppose you understood the point, students. So here I am using two adjectives. One is taller, another one is shorter. What I mean to say is she is either taller or shorter than her sister. Maybe she is little tall or maybe she is little short. So I exactly don't know how to compare to her sister. So when I look into this girl and the other girl is not in the scene, I'll think, okay, she may be as tall as her sister, means of equal height, or she may be shorter than her sister. Okay, so that is the meaning. She is tall, if not shorter than her sister. So when I'm using 2 degrees, this is what, students? This is positive. I'm using a positive degree here. And here I'm using a comparative. So when I'm using like this, a positive or a comparative, I can't use only a positive because positive will always has as in front and as at the back. That's a rule. Whenever I'm using positive, I have to put as in front and as after the adjective. Before and after the adjective, there will be as, or there will be so tall as, or as tall as. So this is a rule. When I'm using a comparative, after the adjective, I have to put THA and then. When I'm using superlative, before the adjective, I have to put THE the. That's a rule. So when I'm having 2 degrees of comparisons in the same sentence, now I suppose you can understand the meaning of the 8th rule. When in the same sentence, 2 adjectives in different degrees of comparisons are used, both should be complete in themselves. Both should be complete in themselves means, as per rule, positive must have before and after as. Comparative must have after THA and then. Superlative must have before THE the. So these rules must be followed. So the correct sentence is, she is as tall as, if not shorter than her sister. So maybe she is equal height of her sister, or maybe she is shorter than her sister. So this is what actually I wanted to say. She is as tall as, if not shorter. But when I'm saying like this, she is tall, if not short, what is the answer going to be, or what is the meaning going to be? Maybe she is taller or maybe she is shorter. But actually what is my meaning? She may be of equal height or maybe little shorter. That is actually my idea. So how am I to write the sentence? She is as tall as, if not shorter than her sister. Understood, students? So this is your 8th rule. Coming to 9th rule, to show whether the difference between the compared thing or person is small or big, we use quantifiers of the comparative degree of an adjective. Now just now I was telling you, she may be as tall as or maybe shorter. Instead of saying that, I can say she's almost as tall as, or she's slightly shorter than. Did you understand? Instead of using 2 adjectives like this to confuse you, instead of using a positive and a comparative or like that, instead of confusing, I better use like this. Examples are, my hostel is only marginally bigger than yours. Marginally means little. She is a little more popular than her sister in the school. Little more means almost equal. Marginally bigger, little more, slightly, that means almost equal. So she is slightly shorter than her sister, or she is marginally equal to her sister. So when I use this, I don't have a trouble of using 2 degrees of comparisons in the same sentence. Did you understand? So this is another way how you can write. So your rule number 9 says to show whether the difference between the compared thing or person, whatever we are comparing with, a person or thing, is small or big. We use quantifiers for the comparative degree. What are the quantifiers? A bit, a little, a lot, far, much, a great deal, significantly, etc. So we use these quantifiers only when we are comparing the things which are almost similar. And when do we do this, students? Only when we are using comparatives. Remember once again, very rare cases we will use superlatives. Whenever you are using these quantifiers, remember you will be using them only for comparative degrees of comparisons, not for superlatives. But in certain cases, you will be using for superlative. Let us see. We don't use quantifiers with superlative degrees. Can you see? We don't use quantifiers with superlative degrees of adjectives, but there are certain phrases commonly used with the superlative degrees of comparisons. Very, very rarely we have these superlatives used with quantifiers. So we will see what they are. In metropolitan cities, metros are by far the cheapest mode of transportation. Can you see the quantifier, students? By far. Where is it? Here. So in certain degrees, in certain cases only, we will use it for superlatives. In metropolitan cities, metros are by far the cheapest mode of transport. By far means mostly cheapest. Maybe there are some other transportations which is as equal as metros. Maybe. So here actually you wanted to show it is superlative. So superlatives will not have any little comparisons. I suppose you understand what I'm trying to tell you. What is comparative? You're comparing two people or two things together. When you're comparing two things, there may be a light difference between the two things. So you can use a quantifier to say a little bit or a lot or by far. You can use those words because it's compared. Two things are compared. But what is the meaning of superlative? It's the best. It's at the top. There's nothing else more topper than that. That's the best. Superlative. So why do you use quantifiers for superlatives? Superlative it means it's superb. It's on top. There's nothing more dominating than it. So for superlatives, you should not use quantifiers, but in rare cases, this rule. So in metropolitan cities, metros are by far the cheapest mode of transportation. Sanskrit is one of the oldest language in the world. One of the oldest. That means what I'm trying to tell you, there are some other languages also which are equal to Sanskrit or as old as Sanskrit. So superlatives can very rarely be compared to something else. Sanskrit is one of the oldest language. So what do I try to tell you? One of the oldest means there are other old languages also now. Sanskrit is not only the oldest language, but there are some other languages which is as old as Sanskrit in the world. That's the meaning. Siddhivinayak is the second richest temple in India. Second richest means another richest temple is also there along with Siddhivinayak. So I am not trying to show that this is the superlative, but along with it I am trying to show that something else is also superlative. So this is how you are going to use superlatives, that means the highest degree compared with other degrees. I suppose you understood your rule number 9. Now coming up to rule number 10. While changing the degrees of comparisons for the irregular adjectives, I told you there are some irregular adjectives which will not take er, est or more or most. Like little, less, least, bad, worse, worst, good, better, best. The entire word changes. So you can see here, while changing the degrees of comparisons for the irregular adjectives, the word completely changes instead of adding er or est. We don't add er or est, it completely changes. She has little milk in the jar. She has less milk than he has. She has the least amount of milk. So she has little milk. I'm not comparing her to anybody else. So this is a positive degree. She has less milk than he has. I'm comparing she with he. So this is comparative. She has the least amount of milk. There's nobody who has less than her. So this is superlative. So you have understood, students. In some cases, I will use completely, I will not add ER, EST, or I will not use more, most. Okay, not only ER, EST, I will not even use more, most. Instead, I'll completely change the word. So this is your 10th rule. So with that, we have gone with all the rules, students, all the 10 rules. Now, generally how you will get your exams, changing of degrees of comparisons, I've made it in a tabular form for a better understanding. You'll better understand it. So there are 4 rules where you have to use. I've told you positive only when you're talking about one, you say it's positive. When you're comparing two things, only two things, then you will be comparing one thing to another. Superlative, that means more than two things when you're talking about. That's called superlative. So this you must have understood. And whenever you're using positive, you will always have before and after the adjective as, or so as. And whenever you're writing a comparative degree of comparison, mandatory after the adjective you have to use THAN than. And whenever you're using superlative before the adjective, you have to use THE the. So this is the rule. Now, the various 4 levels I have here, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 levels, what you're going to do, how you're going to frame, we are going to see. Now the first one, not so tall as, or. This is a negative sentence, students. She is not so tall as her sister. Or you can also say oblique, as tall as. You can either say she is not so tall as, or you can say she is as tall as. So this is a negative and this is a positive. Can you see, this is a negative and this is positive. Now in the positive degree, if you say she is not so tall as her sister, or if you say she is as tall as her sister, then how is the comparative sentence going to come? If in the exam they will give you positive degree like this and they'll ask you to change it into comparative, then without changing the meaning, you have to change the sentence. Without changing the meaning, you have to change the sentence. So we'll see how. So as I was telling you, this table is very, very important, students. We have here the 4 rules. You can see the first one, not so tall as, taller than, and there's no superlative. The second one is no other as tall as, or taller than any other, the tallest. So let me explain you what actually these rules are. Now take the example of the first one, not so tall as, or you can also say, students, as tall as. We can either use not so tall as, or we will use as tall as. Now, say for example, we have 2 people. Okay? Say for example, we have 2 people and we are only comparing the two people, right? Like we have, excuse me, okay, for example, I say Reena is not so tall as Seema. So I have two people over here, students, that is Reena and Seema. So I'm comparing only two people. So there is no superlative. So that's the first rule. Whenever we are comparing only two people, then only positive and comparative will be there, and there will be no superlative. Did you understand? So we have no superlative here in the first case, in the first rule. So I'm only talking about Reena, who is not as tall as Seema. So this is a positive case. This is a positive case. Now how do we go for a comparative case? I just wanted to give you a comparative case. What is comparative? Taller than. Supposing they give you in a question like this, Reena is not so tall as Seema, then change it into comparative. How are you going to write in comparative? It is like this, students. Seema is taller than Reena. Seema is taller than Reena. Can you now understand the point? Reena is not so tall as Seema. So she must be either equal to Seema or she must be shorter than Seema, but she's not tall. So without changing the meaning, I changed the degree of comparison. How? By saying Seema is taller than Reena. Okay, she's taller than. So look into the first case, students. Look into the first rule, not so tall as. Supposing you have not so tall as, then in the comparative case it will be taller than. Supposing you will have as tall as, then in the comparative case you will have not taller than. Did you understand the point? If not is used over here, there will be no not in comparative. If no not is used over here, then you have to use a not in the comparative. That's the rule. So supposing I say in the positive case, supposing I say Reena is as tall as Seema. Supposing I say Reena is as tall as Seema, and supposing I have to write it in a comparative form. If I have to write in a comparative, then Seema is not taller than Reena. Now look into this case. Reena is as tall as Seema. She is as tall as, means she must be equal to Seema's height or she must be a little more than Seema's height. But she is not shorter than Seema. That's the meaning over here. Reena is as tall as Seema. So when I'm changing into comparative, I should write Seema is not taller than, because she's as tall as Seema. Reena is as tall as Seema. That means Seema is not as tall as Reena. That's the meaning. So she's not taller than Reena. So now you must have understood the first rule, students. Not tall as. If you have, then in the comparative case you have to use taller than. If you're using in the positive case as tall as, then in the comparative case you have to use not taller than. And there is no superlative. So let us look into the example. Here we have an example. The elephant is not so tall as the giraffe. Okay, the elephant is not so tall as giraffe. So you can understand elephant is shorter than giraffe. That's the meaning. Elephant is not so tall as giraffe. So in the comparative case, what will I write? The giraffe is taller than the elephant. Okay, and there is no superlative case because I'm only comparing an elephant and a giraffe. So this is the first case, or you can say rule number 1. This is the rule number 1. What is the rule number 1? You will only have a positive and comparative. That means you are comparing only between two people and you're not comparing more than two people. That's the first rule, remember. And in the first rule, you will only have tall as tall as or not as tall as. And the other one is taller than or not taller than. And there is no superlative. So bear in your brains. So this is with not. In the positive case, I have used a negative form. That's not. Now look into the second one. His son can speak in English as fluent as his daughter. So I have not used not over here. This is a positive one. As fluent as. I've used as fluent as. So his son can speak in English as fluently as his daughter. His daughter is not more fluent than his son in speaking English. So when there is no not in the positive case, there will be a not in the comparative case. When there is a not in the positive case, there will be no not in the comparative case. So this is the rule number 1. Remember, rule number 1, you will have comparison between two people only. So there is only a positive and a comparative. At no case or no chance you will have a superlative. So this is your first rule. Now let us look into your second rule. No other as tall as. Taller than any other. The tallest. So what did you understand in the second case? There is a positive, there is a comparative, there is a superlative. And the superlative is the toppest. There's nobody dominating the superlative. The tallest means there's nobody who's taller than. That's the meaning. So let us look into the examples of that. So this is your rule 2. In your rule 2, no other state in India is as small as Goa. As small as. No other state. That means this is the smallest. All over India, there is no smaller state than Goa. That's the meaning. So no other state in India is as small as Goa. Goa is smaller than any other state in India. See, remember students, meaning must not change. Everywhere I wanted to show that Goa is the smallest in India. Smallest state in India. So how am I showing no other state in India is as small as Goa? So as small as is a positive case. Positive degree of comparison. But I am showing the sentence in superlative. How am I showing? By saying that no other state in India is as small as Goa. So what I indirectly meant to say, Goa is the smallest. Now the same thing, how am I going to show in comparative? By saying Goa is smaller than any other state in India. So here you have to remember in your rule 2, along with the positive case and the comparative case, these are the things which you have to use. Along with as small as, you have to use no other. No other state in India is as small as Goa. Goa is smaller than any other state in India. Goa is the smallest state in India. So smallest, there's no other state like this. So this is the smallest. So this is your rule 2, students. Have a look. No other state in India is as, of course I've used tall over here, is as, no other animal is as tall as giraffe. Giraffe is taller than any other animals in the zoo, or giraffe is the tallest animal. So this is rule 2. What is rule 2? You will ultimately show that the superlative is the dominant. There is nothing dominating it. Okay? So this is the highest, the superlative. Now coming to your third rule. In your third rule, very few as tall as. That means along with your superlative, there are other things. Like for example, I've told you Sanskrit is one of the oldest language in the world. So what I want to show that along with Sanskrit, there are other languages which are as old as Sanskrit. So this is the third rule, students. One of the tallest. So this is not the tallest, it's one of the tallest. Did you understand? So here, when we come to this case in rule number 3, I can't show that superlative is the highest or the ultimate. I can't show. I wanted to show that it is one among the others. Superlative is one among the others. So in that case, what I'm going to use is very few as tall as. Taller than most other and one of the. So let us look into the example, students, in your rule 3. We'll see what the examples are in rule 3. In your rule 3, very few men in the world are as rich as Mukesh Ambani. Very few men in the world are as rich as Mukesh Ambani. So here I wanted to show that Mukesh Ambani is not the only person who's rich in India. Along with him, some other people are also rich. So he's one among them. Very few men in the world are as rich as Mukesh Ambani. So when I'm going with comparative form, I say Mukesh Ambani is richer than many other men in the world. So there are many other people and he is also one among them. Mukesh Ambani is one of the richest men in the world. So in your rule number 3, you wanted to show the superlative. Along with superlative, there are equal cases. It's one among others. So this is the third case. So again, coming back to your fourth rule, students. Some at least as tall as, not taller than, not the tallest. So here in the fourth case or in the fourth rule, what I wanted to show is the superlative is not even the topmost with others. It's an average. Did you understand? The first case, there is no superlative. Second case, ultimate. There is nobody dominating the superlative. Third one, along with it, some other cases are there. One among, it's one among. Here, it is not even one among. It's an average. So let us see how this fourth rule is going to come, students. Some girls in the college are not at least as short as Ravali. So I wanted to say indirectly that Ravali is short. But of course, she's not the shortest, she's not the tallest, she's not ultimate. She's not shortest, she's not tallest, she's an average. Means there are so many people along with Ravali. So I wanted to show some girls in the college are at least as short as Ravali. So Ravali is not ultimate, she's one among. Here, Ravali is not shorter than some other. She's not shorter than some other girls in the college. Okay, so she's not short, she's not tall. Ravali is not the shortest of the girls in the college. She's not the shortest. So this is the fourth rule. So you have to almost mug this tabular form, students. This is very, very important for your degrees of comparisons in your board exam. Please be very, very careful whenever you have to change a positive or a comparative or a superlative into some other degree. This tabular form you almost have to memorize. Then it's easy for you to understand. Okay, students, that's all for this day. Have a nice time. Thank you.